The Galactic Council had warned them about the Nexus 9 system. Even our most advanced species avoid those worlds, the council representative had said, mandibles clicking with concern. But Dr. Kira Reynolds had never been one to heed warnings, especially when they stood between her and groundbreaking xenobiological research. Standing now on the violet plains of Nexus 9's third planet, Kira couldn't help but smile at the irony. The most dangerous system in known space had also proven to be the most fascinating. Through her specialized visor, she watched as massive shapes moved through the darkness, the infamous shadow stalkers that had claimed so many lives and earned this world its deadly reputation. Movement at 2 o'clock, Lieutenant James Harrison whispered through their comm system. The military escort stood ready, pulse rifles humming with barely contained energy. The entire team was on edge, except for Kira. She had noticed something in the creature's behavior patterns that nobody else had picked up on. The shadow stalkers weren't just mindless killing machines, they were intelligent, social, and most surprisingly, curious about the newcomers to their world. "Hold your fire," Kira commanded, stepping forward despite the protests of her security team. The nearest shadow stalker, a beast nearly 4 meters tall with iridescent scales that seemed to bend light around its massive frame, turned its 6 eyes toward her. In that moment, Kira did something that would change the course of human history. She reached out with an open hand and projected calm, steady thoughts. The universal translator at her belt might not understand the creature's language, but she had learned that emotions often transcended species barriers. The shadow stalker's approach was silent, despite its enormous size. The security team's weapons tracked its movement, but Kira remained still. When the creature lowered its head to her level, she could see her reflection in its multifaceted eyes. "Hello, beautiful," she whispered, and slowly placed her hand on its scaled snout. The creature's resonant purr vibrated through her bones, and the atmosphere in the clearing shifted dramatically. Other shadow stalkers emerged from the darkness, not as hunters, but as curious observers. "Dr. Reynolds," Harrison's voice cracked with tension, "what exactly are you doing?" "Making history, Lieutenant," she replied, never taking her eyes off the creature. "We've been looking at them all wrong. They're not monsters, they're sentient beings waiting for someone to understand them." The next few hours were a blur of activity as Kira and her team documented the unprecedented interaction. The shadow stalkers, far from being the mindless predators of legend, displayed complex social behaviors and an almost immediate affinity for human presence. Dr. Raj Patel, the team's xenolinguist, worked frantically to record and analyze the creature's various vocalizations and electromagnetic emissions. "This is extraordinary," he muttered, eyes fixed on his instruments. "They're not just communicating, they're trying to communicate with us." As the planet's long night cycle progressed, more revelations followed. The shadow stalkers demonstrated problem-solving abilities that rivaled Earth's most intelligent species. They showed the team to safe water sources, warned them of dangerous areas through elaborate displays, and even seemed to assign individual guardians to each human team member. "The Galactic Council isn't going to believe this," Harrison said, watching as a juvenile shadow stalker playfully mimicked his movements. The hardened soldier had finally lowered his weapon, though his training kept him alert. "They don't have to believe it," Kira replied, examining the complex patterns of bioluminescence that rippled across her new companion's scales. "We're going to prove it. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to connect with other species. While the rest of the galaxy saw monsters, we recognized kindred spirits." As the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, Kira knew they had only scratched the surface. The shadow stalkers weren't just another alien species to be studied, they were a testament to humanity's unique place in the galaxy. Where others saw danger, humans saw potential. Where others feared the unknown, humans reached out in friendship. The discovery would shake the foundations of galactic society, but that was tomorrow's problem. For now, Kira was content to watch as humans and shadow stalkers shared space on a world that had been feared for millennia, knowing that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. News of the Nexus 9 breakthrough spread through the galactic community like wildfire. 3 months after their initial contact, the human research station had become a hub of controversial activity, drawing equal parts amazement and skepticism from across known space. Admiral Zyxtal of the Galactic Council stood at the observation window, his crystalline form refracting the alien sunlight as he watched a scene that defied everything he thought he knew about natural law. Below, Dr. Kira Reynolds was leading a shadow stalker through a series of complex interactions while Dr. Patel recorded data nearby. Impossible, the Admiral's translator rendered his crystalline harmonics into speech. These creatures decimated 3 of our most advanced exploration fleets. With all due respect, Admiral, Research Director Marcus Wong replied, they were defending their territory from what they perceived as threats. Your fleets came in with weapons charged. We came in with open hands. The shadow stalker below, whom the team had named Aurora for her brilliant bioluminescent displays, was demonstrating an ability to manipulate simple tools with her secondary appendages. More remarkably, she was teaching this skill to her pack mates. What you're witnessing, Marcus continued, is just the beginning. The shadow stalkers aren't just intelligent, they're accelerated learners. They adapt and pass knowledge through their neural networks at an unprecedented rate. A commotion from the eastern perimeter drew their attention. Lieutenant Harrison was leading a training exercise with a younger shadow stalker, teaching it to distinguish between different types of potential threats. The creature's ability to grasp complex concepts had proven extraordinary. Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries, Admiral Zyxtal observed. How is it that you've accomplished what the elder races could not? Before Marcus could respond, the station's alerts began blaring. Dr. Patel's voice crackled over the comm, multiple bogies entering atmosphere. Reading energy signatures consistent with Karvak raiders. The Karvak, space pirates who operated on the fringes of civilized space, had apparently decided that the research station would make an easy target. They couldn't have been more wrong. As the raiders' ships descended through the atmosphere, something remarkable happened. Without any prompting from the humans, the shadow stalkers began organizing themselves into defensive formations. Aurora let out a series of complex electromagnetic pulses that rippled through the pack network. They're protecting us, Kira's voice came through clear and confident. Admiral, you're about to see exactly why humanity has succeeded where others failed. We don't just study these beings, we trust them, and they trust us. The Karvak ships opened fire, but their energy weapons seemed to bend and distort around the shadow stalker's natural ability to manipulate light and shadow. The creatures moved with impossible speed and coordination, using their massive bodies to shield the research station while other pack members launched themselves into the air using previously unknown biological capabilities. Admiral Zyxtal watched in stunned silence as the shadow stalkers systematically disabled the raiders' ships, bringing them down without destroying them, a display of not just power, but precision and restraint. Extraordinary, the Admiral's harmonics trembled. They're not just defending territory. They're executing complex tactical maneuvers to protect non-pack members. When the last raider ship was grounded, and the Karvak crew were being secured by Harrison's security team, Aurora returned to Kira's side, her bioluminescence pulsing with what the humans had learned to recognize as pride and affection. This is why we succeeded, Marcus explained to the still-stunned Admiral. Other species saw the shadow stalkers as obstacles to be overcome or enemies to be conquered. We saw them as potential allies, friends even. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military might, it's our ability to reach across the boundaries of species and find common ground. Dr. Patel approached with his latest analysis. The electromagnetic patterns during the battle were fascinating. They weren't just coordinating attacks, they were expressing concern for our safety, calculating minimal force requirements, and even showing satisfaction at a successful defense without casualties. Admiral Zyxtal's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue of decision. The Council will need to reevaluate many of its assumptions, about both the shadow stalkers and humanity. Perhaps there are more kinds of intelligence in this galaxy than we were prepared to recognize. As night fell on Nexus 9, the research station hummed with activity. The Shadow Stalkers had taken up defensive positions around the perimeter, not because they were ordered to, but because they had chosen to become guardians of their new allies. Kira stood with Aurora, watching the stars emerge above them. "We've only begun to understand each other," she said softly, knowing that even if the words weren't understood, the sentiment was. Aurora's answering pulse of bioluminescence suggested that perhaps understanding went deeper than words ever could. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council cast harsh light through the holographic chambers, illuminating the faces of representatives from 1,000 worlds. At the center of the storm stood Director Marcus Wong and Dr. Kira Reynolds, facing down the collective anxiety of the galaxy's most powerful beings. "The Void Plague has already consumed 3 solar systems," First Speaker Thelomore's tentacles writhed with distress. "If it reaches the core worlds, billions will die." The Void Plague was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a quantum virus that devoured organic matter and converted it into dark energy. Conventional weapons passed right through it, and quarantine efforts had failed spectacularly. "Our solution is unconventional," Marcus admitted, "but the Shadow Stalker's ability to manipulate light and dark energy could be the key to stopping this threat." A wave of protests filled the chamber. Commander Vix of the militant sectors rose to his full height, metal plates gleaming. "You propose we trust the fate of the galaxy to creatures that were considered apex predators mere months ago?" With all due respect, Kira stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Those apex predators have shown more wisdom and restraint than many species in this chamber. They understand the threat better than we do, they can actually see the quantum structures of the Void Plague." Back on Nexus 9, Lieutenant Harrison and Dr. Patel were already working with Aurora and her pack to understand how their unique biology might be weaponized against the plague. The Shadow Stalker's natural ability to bend light and manipulate dark energy had proven to be more than just a defensive mechanism. It was a sophisticated tool that could potentially disrupt the plague at its quantum level. "Time is running out," Marcus pressed. "The plague will reach the Centauri cluster within days. We need to act now." The council chambers erupted in debate, but a sudden transmission silenced everyone. The holographic display showed a Shadow Stalker, Aurora, interfacing directly with the communication systems. The sight of the creature using technology sent shockwaves through the assembly. The translation matrix struggled to convert Aurora's complex electromagnetic signals, but her message was clear: her species understood the threat and were willing to risk everything to help stop it. More importantly, they had evolved to their current form specifically to combat similar threats in the ancient past. "This is unprecedented," First Speaker Thelomore whispered. "Direct communication from a species we thought were merely animals months ago." "They were never merely anything," Kira responded. "We just never took the time to understand them. Now they're offering to save us all." The plan that emerged was audacious. A joint task force of human ships and Shadow Stalkers would confront the Void Plague at the Helios barrier, where ancient quantum structures could amplify the creature's natural abilities. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only option left. As the human fleet assembled, something remarkable happened. Shadow Stalkers from across Nexus 9 began arriving voluntarily, ready to fight alongside their human allies. Their bioluminescent communications created a spectacular light show visible from orbit, a declaration of unity that transcended species barriers. "They're not just helping us," Dr. Patel observed, watching as Shadow Stalkers boarded specially designed ships. "They're teaching us." Every interaction reveals new aspects of their quantum manipulation abilities. "We're learning more about the fundamental forces of the universe from them than we have in centuries of scientific research." Lieutenant Harrison, now working closely with a Shadow Stalker he'd named Nova, coordinated the loading operations. "Remember when we first landed here?" he asked Kira. "We thought we were walking into hell itself. Instead, we found the allies we never knew we needed." The launch countdown began as the combined fleet prepared to face an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. Human scientists worked alongside shadow stalkers, fine-tuning the quantum resonance chambers that would amplify their allies' natural abilities. Admiral Zyxtal, who had become one of their strongest supporters in the Council, joined Kira on the command deck of the flagship. When this crisis first began, the Council considered destroying entire sectors to contain the plague. Now we pin our hopes on cooperation between humans and the very creatures we once feared most. The galaxy will never be the same after this. That's the point, Kira replied, watching as Aurora took her position in the quantum chamber. The galaxy needs to change. We've spent too long drawing lines between species, deciding who is sentient and who isn't, who deserves a voice and who doesn't. The shadow stalkers are showing us a better way, one where different species don't just coexist, but elevate each other. As the fleet prepared to jump to the Helios barrier, the shadow stalkers began emitting a harmonious electromagnetic pulse that resonated through every ship. It wasn't just communication, it was a song of unity, of purpose, of hope. The fate of the galaxy now rested on the shoulders of humanity's most unlikely alliance. But as Kira looked around at the seamless cooperation between humans and shadow stalkers, she knew that they had already achieved something far greater than merely surviving. They had proven that the greatest breakthroughs come not from conquering or controlling, but from reaching out with trust and understanding. The Helios barrier loomed before them, its ancient quantum structures pulsing with energies that had mystified scientists for millennia. The combined fleet of human ships and shadow stalkers held position at the edge of the phenomenon, watching as the writhing mass of the void plague approached. From the flagship's bridge, Kira watched through specialized quantum viewers as Aurora and her pack prepared themselves in the resonance chambers. The shadow stalkers' bioluminescent patterns had taken on a new intensity, creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around them. Energy readings are off the charts, Dr. Patel reported, his instrument struggling to process the data. The shadow stalkers are synchronizing with the barrier's quantum field in ways we never thought possible. Lieutenant Harrison's voice crackled over the comm from his position on one of the escort vessels. Multiple contacts emerging from the plague. It's creating constructs of some kind. The void plague had evolved, forming massive tentacles of dark energy that reached out toward the fleet. But the shadow stalkers were ready. Aurora let out a pulse of energy that rippled through the neural network connecting her species, and what happened next defied all known laws of physics. The shadow stalkers began to glow with an inner light that bent and twisted reality itself. Their natural ability to manipulate light and dark energy, amplified by the quantum resonance chambers and the ancient structures of the Helios barrier, created a spectacular display of power that left even the most seasoned scientists speechless. They're not just fighting it, Kira realized, watching as the shadow stalkers' energy patterns created complex interference patterns with the plague. They're communicating with it. They're trying to understand it. Through the quantum viewers, they could see the plague's dark energy constructs reacting to the shadow stalkers' attempts at communication. The violent tentacles began to slow, their patterns shifting from chaotic destruction to something more ordered. Of course, Dr. Patel exclaimed, his hands flying over his console. The plague isn't just a virus, it's a quantum intelligence. The shadow stalkers aren't destroying it, they're reprogramming it at the fundamental level. Aurora's pack led the charge, their bodies becoming living conduits of light and energy. The shadow stalkers were revealing abilities that went far beyond mere predatory adaptations, they were showing themselves to be masters of the quantum realm itself. Multiple shadow stalker packs are reporting successful quantum entanglement with the plague's core structure, Harrison reported. They're teaching it. Just like they learned from us, they're teaching the plague a new way to exist. The void plague's dark tendrils began to transform, their destructive energy being redirected and reshaped by the shadow stalker's influence. What had been a force of pure destruction was being transformed into something new, a controlled quantum matrix that could actually stabilize damaged regions of space. This is extraordinary, Admiral Zyxtal's crystalline form sparkled with excitement. They're not just stopping the plague, they're evolving it. converting a galaxy-ending threat into a tool for healing reality itself. The process took hours, during which the combined fleet watched in awe as the Shadow Stalkers performed their miraculous work. When it was finally complete, the Void Plague had been transformed into a network of beneficial quantum structures, guided and controlled by the Shadow Stalkers' influence. Aurora returned to the flagship, her body still shimming with residual quantum energies. Through their now refined translation systems, she conveyed a profound truth: her species had evolved over millions of years to be guardians of the quantum realm, maintaining the delicate balance between light and dark energy in the galaxy. The humans hadn't just found allies, they had rediscovered the galaxy's ancient protectors. "We never saw their true purpose," Kira said softly, placing her hand on Aurora's scaled head. "Everyone assumed they were monsters because they lived in darkness and hunted other species. But they were hunting quantum anomalies, maintaining the fabric of space-time itself. We just couldn't see it before." The implications were staggering. The Shadow Stalkers weren't just another spacefaring species, they were living quantum engineers, evolved to protect the galaxy from threats that most species couldn't even perceive. And humanity, through their unique ability to build trust and understanding with other species, had helped reawaken this ancient purpose. As news of their success spread throughout the galaxy, the council chambers erupted in celebration. But for Kira and her team, this was just the beginning. The partnership between humans and Shadow Stalkers had opened up entirely new fields of quantum science, promising technologies and understandings that would revolutionize life throughout the galaxy. "You know what this means," Harrison said, watching as Shadow Stalkers and humans worked together to stabilize the transformed plague. "Everything changes now. Everything we thought we knew about life, intelligence, even reality itself, it all changes." Kira smiled, watching as Aurora's bioluminescent patterns danced across her scales, telling the story of their victory in light and shadow. "That's what humans do best, isn't it? We change things. We build bridges. We turn monsters into allies and threats into opportunities. And now, thanks to our friends here, we're going to help change the galaxy for the better." 1 year after the Void Plague incident, the Nexus 9 Research Center had become the most prestigious scientific institution in known space. The massive complex, built into the Violet Plains where Kira had first reached out to Aurora, now housed thousands of researchers from across the galaxy, all working alongside Shadow Stalkers to unlock the mysteries of quantum reality. Director Marcus Wong stood at the main observatory, watching as a new group of Shadow Stalker younglings learned to manipulate quantum fields under Aurora's guidance. Below them, scientists from 100 different species recorded data and conducted experiments that would have been impossible just a year ago. "Hard to believe this all started because one human decided to pet a supposedly deadly predator," Admiral Zyxtal said, his crystalline form refracting the light of 3 setting suns. As the Galactic Council's new Minister of Interspecies Relations, he had become a frequent visitor to the facility. "That's humanity's gift to the galaxy," Dr. Patel replied, not looking up from his quantum interface where Shadow Stalker energy patterns danced across the screen. "We see potential where others see threat. We reach out when others pull back." The facility's latest project was perhaps its most ambitious yet. Using the Shadow Stalker's quantum manipulation abilities, combined with human ingenuity and technology from across the galaxy, they were developing a network of quantum corridors that would revolutionize space travel. The transformed Void Plague, now controlled and guided by Shadow Stalker consciousness, served as the foundation for this new transportation system. Lieutenant Harrison, recently promoted to security chief of the entire complex, entered the observatory with Nova at his side. The Shadow Stalker had grown considerably over the past year, his bioluminescent patterns now incorporating symbols from human language, a sign of how both species were evolving through their contact with each other. "The first quantum corridor test is ready," Harrison announced. Kira and Aurora are preparing for the initial transit. The test chamber hummed with energy as Kira and Aurora took their positions. They would be the first to travel through the new quantum network, a fitting choice, given that their friendship had started it all. The shadow stalkers had insisted that their human partners join them in this historic moment, demonstrating the deep trust that had developed between the species. Remember when the council thought this was all impossible? Marcus mused, watching the final preparations. When they said predators couldn't be partners, that different species couldn't truly understand each other? The quantum corridor sparked to life, its swirling energies controlled and shaped by a team of shadow stalkers working in perfect harmony with human quantum physicists. The sight of the two species cooperating so seamlessly still amazed visitors to the facility, but for those who worked there, it had become wonderfully normal. Through the facility's communication network, Aurora's translated thoughts reached everyone present. Our species evolved in darkness, watching over the quantum realm for eons. We waited for others who could see beyond fear, who could understand our purpose. In humans, we found not just allies, but kindred spirits, beings who, like us, are guardians of possibility. The test was a complete success. Kira and Aurora emerged from the quantum corridor at a receiving station light-years away, their triumph broadcast across the galaxy. It was more than just a technological breakthrough. It was proof that the partnership between humans and shadow stalkers could achieve things that neither species could have managed alone. In the years that followed, the impact of their alliance reshaped galactic civilization. The quantum corridors expanded, connecting distant worlds in ways previously thought impossible. Shadow stalkers began serving on human ships as quantum engineers and reality maintenance specialists, while human researchers helped their allies develop new ways to communicate their ancient knowledge to other species. More importantly, the success of their partnership sparked a revolution in how different species interacted with each other. The galaxy began to look at so-called primitive or dangerous species with new eyes, wondering what other potential allies they had overlooked out of fear or prejudice. On the 10th anniversary of first contact, Kira stood with Aurora on the same violet plane where they had first met. The research center sprawled behind them, its quantum towers reaching into the sky, but this spot remained unchanged, a reminder of how something as simple as trust could change everything. "We've come so far," Kira said, watching a group of human children playing with shadow stalker younglings in the distance. The scene would have been unthinkable a decade ago, but now it was just another day on Nexus 9. Aurora's response rippled through the quantum field. They all now understood so much better. We have only begun. The galaxy is full of shadows that need understanding, not fear. Together, we will find them all. As night fell on Nexus 9, the shadow stalkers' bioluminescence painted the sky with stories of past and future, of darkness and light, of fear transformed into friendship. Their glow was joined by the lights of the research center, where humans and shadow stalkers continued their work together, proving that in the vast darkness of space, the brightest light comes from reaching out to those we once feared. The legacy of that first contact, of one human's choice to trust rather than fear, had become a beacon for the entire galaxy. It showed that true progress comes not from conquering the unknown, but from embracing it, not from taming what we fear, but from understanding it. In the end, the story of humans and shadow stalkers became more than just a tale of friendship between species. It became a reminder that in a universe full of monsters, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is offer our hand in trust and see the beauty in what others fear.